All right, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on when you see this. Today, we are going to dive into some writing. So if you look at today's folder under Thursday, 9/24, you guys will see our learning target and success criteria. So today we're going to write a retelling of the medicine bag from another character's point of view using descriptive details and well-structured event sequences. So by the end of actually tomorrow, this is going to be a 2-day process. You're going to use your rubric provided to write a retelling of the medicine bag from another character's point of view. So today all you have to do is participate in either the live lesson, so you're watching this as a recap, or just by watching this video below, and then completing the medicine bag planning activity down here. So before we do that, I want to get you thinking a little bit. For those of you who are in class, you already did this. For those of you who are just watching this, this is the same thing that we did in class. So I want you to think about how this story would be different if it were told from another character's point of view. So if it wasn't Martin who was the narrator, how would this story be different if, say, Cheryl or Martin's mom or Martin's friend or even perhaps Grandpa was telling the story? Think about that. I know if it were me, I think that different details would have been highlighted depending on who was telling the story. If it was Cheryl, I think she would have been a little bit more upbeat. We would have known a little bit more how excited she was to see Grandpa. We would have known more about her true feelings as opposed to just hearing about Martin's embarrassment. If it was Mom, there might have been more, intimate details about her concern for her father, traveling all that way to their house, as an old, feeble man, so on and so forth. So depending on who was telling the story, I think different details would have been highlighted. Since Martin told the story, his feelings of embarrassment were truly highlighted. So I want you to look at this picture and tell me what you notice. Just think about it, obviously, because you don't have the chat box to drop your answers in. But just look at that picture and identify some things that you notice. Right off the bat, I notice two clip art people in a disagreement. I also see that they have really silly looking hands, which is kind of funny. The face that they're making kind of lets me know the one who thinks that this is a W looks a little perplexed. He's scratching his head. The person who thinks that this is an M, his face kind of lets me know that he's a little bit more confident, as opposed to, again, him who looks like he's a little bit more confused. And then there's something in the center that they are disagreeing over, and it's something that, based on where they're standing, looks very different. So what I'm wondering is how they got to this position. What I'm wondering is, how they are going to solve this disagreement, because based on where they're standing, they both seem right. And then something else I wonder is, where are they going to go from here? Maybe if they switch sides, are they going to be able to see what the other person sees? But this was just, an example of point of view, because based on where these two men were standing, their point of views were very different. This one right here, when he looked at that letter, he saw a W because of his point of view and where he was standing. This man over here sees an M because where he's viewing the letter, it looks very much like an M. So, since we are going to be doing a retelling of this story from a different point of view, I want to show you this video about, what point of view would be best. So, enjoy.
I am an invisible man. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. You are about to begin reading Italo Calvino's new novel. These 3 opening lines from Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, and Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler, each establish a different point of view. Who is telling a story, and from what perspective, are some of the most important choices an author makes. Told from a different point of view, a story can transform completely. Take this fairy tale. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel," the prince called. "Let down your hair." Rapunzel unbraided her hair and slung it out the window. The prince climbed her tresses into the tower. Rapunzel is typically told like this, with the narrator outside the story. This point of view is called third person. But Rapunzel can also be told by a character in the story, a first-person narrator. "The tail end of Rapunzel's locks plopped down at my feet. I grabbed on and began to climb. Ugh, I couldn't untangle myself. Strands came off all over me, sticking to my sweat." In a first-person narrative, the story can change dramatically, depending on which character is the narrator. Say Rapunzel was narrating instead of the prince. "I hope he appreciates how long it takes to unbraid 25 feet of hair," I thought. "Ouch! I'll be honest, I thought my scalp would stretch off my skull. Can you climb any faster?" I yelled. In second person, the narrator addresses the story to the reader. He calls your name. He wants you to let your hair down. You just finished braiding it, but hey, you don't get a lot of visitors. Third person, first person, and second person perspectives each have unique possibilities and constraints. So how do you choose a point of view for your story? Constraints aren't necessarily a bad thing. They can help focus a story or highlight certain elements. For example, a third-person narrator is necessarily a bit removed from the characters, but that can be good for stories where a feeling of distance is important. A third-person narrator can be either limited, meaning they stick close to one character's thoughts and feelings, or they can be omniscient, able to flit between characters' minds and give the reader more information. A first-person story creates closeness between the reader and the narrator. It's also restricted by the narrator's knowledge. This can create suspense as the reader finds out information along with the character. A first-person narrator doesn't necessarily have to represent the character's experience faithfully. They can be delusional or dishonest. In Kazuo Ishiguro's novel, The Remains of the Day, Stevens, an aging British butler in 1956, recounts his many years of service, but fails to acknowledge the flaws of the man he serves. The cracks in his narrative eventually draw the reader's attention to the under-acknowledged failings of the culture and class system he inhabits. Justin Torres' novel, We the Animals, begins with a plural first-person narrator. "We were 6 snatching hands, 6 stomping feet. We were brothers, boys, 3 little kings locked in a feud for more." Partway through the story, the point of view shifts to first-person singular, from we to I, as the boys come of age and one brother feels alienated from the others. Second person is a less common choice. It requires the writer to make the reader suspend disbelief to become another you. Placing the reader in a character's perspective can build urgency and suspense. Sometimes, though, second person is intended to distance the narrator from their own story, rather than bring the reader closer to the story. In these cases, second-person narrators refer to themselves as you rather than I. Writers are constantly experimenting with fresh variations on point of view. New virtual and augmented reality technologies may expand the possibilities for this experimentation. By placing people at a particular vantage point in virtual space, how might we change the way we tell and experience stories? Interested in tips on making your own writing more captivating?
All right. So, what point of view brings readers closer to characters? Think back on that video. Which one really brings us closer to characters and really gets us into their heads and their feelings? you guessed it, it's that first person. So if you think back to the medicine bag, it is written in first person. It's from Martin's point of view. We are going to keep our story in first person because it creates that intimate connection between the reader and whoever is telling the story. What we're going to do, though, is just change who's telling it, and it's going to be a different character in the text. So again, you're going to write this retelling from another character's point of view. The only thing that's going to change is who's telling it. The details are going to stay the same. The events are going to stay the same. And based on who's telling it, your details might change a little bit. Because remember, Martin focused on how embarrassed he was. If, somebody else is telling it, their feelings are going to be the ones highlighted. So you guys have a rubric that is provided, and you're going to write this retelling between today and tomorrow. So here's your prompt. Write a retelling of the story The Medicine Bag from Grandpa's point of view. Based on details from this story, imagine Grandpa's journey to see his family. What are his impressions of Martin and his friends? And how does he feel about giving the medicine bag to Martin to preserve a sacred Lakota tradition? So we've touched on a few of these ideas through our annotations and through our discussions. Your job is going to be planning today. We obviously have to plan before we write. Any good writer knows that. We're going to make Grandpa the narrator, so you don't get a choice. I'm sorry, but this will help you, focus a little bit more instead of figuring out who you want to choose as being in charge. Grandpa's going to be the narrator. We need to make sure that we include any details, thoughts, and feelings from his point of view now instead of Martin. Can we include Martin's feelings through Grandpa's point of view? Of course. That's how we were able to understand what Grandpa was thinking and feeling when Martin was telling the story. But remember, those descriptive details are really going to be focused around Grandpa's point of view. Because we're focused on Grandpa, I'd really like to see you guys use your concept vocabulary. That word wearily, fatigue, sheepishly, straggled, and frail. I'd really like for you to use these in your draft. When you turn it in, we might not focus on this as much today, but you'll see in the graphic organizer, you might be able to work some of these in so that you're already thinking about them. And we are going to keep the same event sequences as before. If you think back to our learning target, we have to use well-structured event sequences. So we're going to keep the same sequences instead of reinventing the wheel. And what I did was I included the paragraph numbers for you so that if you need to go back to the text to read, what Martin was originally saying, to be able to turn it into Grandpa's point of view, this is here. So if you want to screenshot this, you hit the home button and then your power button at the same time, save it to your photos. I would definitely take a screenshot of this so that you have access to those page numbers as you're planning. So what you're going to do, you have a graphic organizer that looks like this, and I'm going to show you. I'm actually logged in as me. What I'm going to do is log in as one of our friends so that you can see exactly what you're supposed to do. It is a OneDrive assignment. At this point, we should be getting pretty used to OneDrive assignments. And when you go in today, you'll see week of 9/21, Thursday. Remember, we've got our learning target, success criteria, our tasks if you forget, and then here's our planning. So again, learning target, success criteria. I've got your prompt right here. And then you have the direction. So it says review the attached narrative rubric as a group. The people who participated in the live lesson did this as a group. Sorry. But it's right down here for you. And then use the planning page, which is a OneDrive assignment provided to plan your retelling. The rubric is here. There are 3 different areas that you are being graded on. Focus and organization, evidence and elaboration, and then your conventions. Remember, we always shoot for a 4. I'm not going to read this to you for sake of time, but please make sure that you do review it. This is exactly what you're being graded on. Always shoot for a 4 because if you fall short, we still get a 3, and that's still good, but we want to be great, so always shoot for a 4. Remember, you're going to go to My Document. It might ask you to sign in. If it does, just click sign in, and it should open right up. Yours might look a little bit different, but you'll see you've got the same directions right here. I've already determined the narrator as being Grandpa. I would put down a description of Grandpa so that you have this to reference as you begin working through. Your graphic organizer is broken down into the different events, and I want you to break down each event into what exactly happened. And then once you do that, you need to jot down how he was feeling during the event, because that's going to help you with your descriptive details. So the journey itself, we know that he traveled for 2.5 days by bus, then he started walking, and eventually he was found by a police officer before he arrived into the neighborhood. And during this, he was very tired and very stiff. But remember, you can use those concept vocabulary words. Okay, wearily, fatigued, sheepishly, straggled, and frail in Grandpa's feelings during the event. All right, so remember to open this, you click edit, it'll pop up. If Ben, typed something in event 2 and then finished all 3 boxes, all he has to do is exit out and then click submit. Please make sure that you click submit. Some of you are doing this and you're not getting any credit because you're not clicking submit. I really want you to get into the habit of submitting your assignment so that I can help you. If you do not have access, which I think the numbers are dwindling significantly, shoot me a message on Schoology or hop into our Zoom if you have a chance, and I will get you your link. I know this was a longer video, but I hope it helps. I can't wait to see what you plan on writing and then eventually what you do write. Have a great day.